feet underwater.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Check this out, y'all. Welcome to the show. Look here. Hector is in a bad situation because he's learned that the cartel that he works for is also responsible for the death of his wife. And he's conflicted because he understands that, you can't fight tomorrow. Bottom line. So what do you do when you're dealing with a cartel? And when I say cartel, I'm talking about the real deal Holyfield. They have reached all over the world. Everywhere that they do business, they have the information that they need on everybody. And let me explain to you what I mean by that, right? When you do business with the cartel, the way it was given to me, the way it was explained to me is simply like this, right? They know who Hector's son is. They know where he lives. They know who Hector's parents is. They know who Maria's parents are. They know everything about you. So that if you do anything to cross them, you may get away. But your family is going to suffer. That's how they maintain their leverage over you. Period, point blank. So he has to make a decision. Does he continue to work for the cartel that is responsible for the death of his wife? Or does he do something reckless, trying to seek revenge, trying to get his lick back, and jeopardize everybody else that he loves in his family that's still alive? Mainly his son, Miguel. And he's conflicted with that. He wants to do something because he feels like a coward. Think about that. What would you do if you knew who hurt somebody in your family? I'm talking about in a bad way. And you knew about it. And you knew who was responsible. Right? Now, we all know how the streets are. The streets say handle it in the streets, right? That's what the streets say. But in this situation, he knows that there's no win for him. So what does that make him do? He starts to spiral out of control. He's taking care of the business of the people that are responsible for the death of his wife. He feels like a coward because he's not doing anything about it. His mind is playing tricks on him. His son is watching him, not understanding why he's spiraling out of control. He's drinking more. He's smoking more, smoking weed. He's starting to snort a little cocaine. He feels like a real sucker, a real loser. You don't go to the police when you're dealing with the cartel. You don't go to the police. You don't wear a wire and try to set them up. All of these things, this is not Hollywood, y'all. This is real stuff. This is real stuff. And that's why it's hard for him to figure out what to do. He don't know what to do. So he's drinking and smoking and getting high. But he's still working for them. Now, he's starting to mess up because he's drinking and smoking. He's starting to mess up some of the things that he is taking care of for them because he's lost. And I know a lot of y'all thought that, in this story, that he would probably go to the police, try to set him up, something like that. But no, I'm giving it to you the way Hector gave it to me. He spiraled out of control. He couldn't go to the police. That's what this culture instills in you. Either you do something about it or you... Man, either you do something about it or you accept it. And a lot of times, man, you find yourself in situations when you're dealing with this lifestyle, you start to accept a lot of things that you don't want to accept. And because you do that, you start to do things that you normally wouldn't do. Like become an even worse example for your son. That's what Hector did. He became an alcoholic. drug user. And the people in the cartel, they knew. They knew while he was spiraling out of control, but they didn't care. They didn't care that he was losing it. They didn't care. All they wanted from him was to continue to do what they needed him to do. And they watched him. They watched him. They didn't have to threaten him. They knew they had power over him. They knew they had control over him. And most people that do business with the cartel, that's what it is. They find themselves in positions like this as well. And a lot of people try to make do, make the best of a bad situation. You get lost in the operations, and that's what he tried to do. He got lost in the day-to-day operations where he was making sure that the people were going to work. He was making sure that they had food to eat, somewhere to sleep. He was making sure that in the other houses that he was operating, that the men were being happy and satisfied with the services that the women in the place were providing. He was making sure, he was trying to get lost in his job. He was making sure that all the things that the cartel required of him were being done to the best of his ability. But his son is watching him. Miguel is watching him. Miguel is seeing that he's not up to par like he used to be. Your children know. Your children know. So one day he's paid a visit by one of the top people in the cartel in this particular state that he's in. And they know about what happened in Honduras. They know that his wife was killed in Honduras. They know that he knows what happened. Now let me tell you about this conversation that took place between Hector and one of the people that were over him. And let me tell you this also, the person that was over Hector, turns out that he was younger than Hector. And Hector said when the dude stepped to him, he told him, he said, man, if I knew who was responsible for killing your wife, I would do something about it. But I don't know who it is. But we're one family. Listen to the audacity. Check out what I'm saying. The audacity of this individual that told Hector that we're one family. That's the manipulation at its heights. We're one family. And we take care of each other. How would you feel if somebody had killed somebody in your family that wasn't related to you, came to you and told you that you were part of a family and we're looking out for each other? That's the craziness in the business. That's the craziness that you have to deal with. So Hector's having this conversation with him and it's making him sick to his stomach because why? When you're dealing with somebody in authority over you in the streets, you feel almost paralyzed when it comes to responding. You want to respond in a way it's like, man, you ain't talking about nothing. But he knows if he would have done that and he would have pissed this person off, then the people that he loves and he cares about could possibly get killed or hurt. And he didn't want that to happen, especially not for his son Miguel. So he played along with it. And he had to further play tricks with his mind. And now he finds himself in a position where he starts to mistreat everybody except Miguel. This was the outward way of how he was trying to, how he was continuing to live. And when I sat down and talked to him, I said, man, at the end of the day, if it would have been me, I would have done something to somebody. I would have got my son somewhere. I would have got my family moved somewhere. Nobody would have known where they were at, and I would have done something to whoever I thought it was, whoever I could get to. And he told me, like I'm getting ready to tell y'all, he said if it was that easy, he would have done it. But he said they watch you. Even when you're the one that's working for the cartel, that's putting in the work, they're watching you. And they're making sure that you do what it is that they need to be done. Whether you like it or not, this bondage is slavery. Whether you like it or not, you're going to do what it is they need you to do. And that's just that on that. And if they ever get an idea in their minds that they can't trust you, he said they'll kill you. It's as simple as that. And he didn't want to get killed. He didn't want his family to get hurt. So he continued to do all the things that he had to do to survive. Kind of like what we do in here. So I asked Hector, I said, tell me, how did you end up in prison then? And he told me that's a funny story. I didn't think it was so funny after he told me, but he said that's a funny story. He said one day they came to him and they asked him to drive a car to the other part of town. This car was loaded down with dope, loaded with cocaine. Loaded with cocaine. And what he didn't know is that the car, it had cocaine in it, but it also had somebody's severed hand in it. Wasn't his hand, you know what I mean? It wasn't his. So when he was driving his car, he ended up getting stopped. He said he was driving the speed limit. He was doing everything that he was supposed to be doing, but they ended up stopping it. The police ended up stopping it. And when they stopped him, they asked to search the car. And it was almost like they knew that he had something in that car. And when they pulled him over, they found all of his drugs and they found his hand. Now, they were not able to match that hand to anything or anybody in their database. So they assumed that the hand belonged to somebody that didn't live in the United States, that probably never been to the United States, or at least wasn't on record. At least wasn't on record. So he got charged with all of the cocaine. Now let me tell you something else about how the cartel works. Let me tell you something else. If you get caught, you take that charge. You don't take that charge, guess what's going to happen to your family? And you. They're going to get you. And you know what I mean by that. And then you still owe them for the value of that dope. No matter when you get out, they want theirs. And if you don't pay that, guess what? Something's going to happen to the people that you love. You're never out of debt. You're never out of debt. It's almost like back in the day, I don't know if any of y'all familiar with sharecropping, back in the day after our ancestors were freed from slavery, right? A lot of people, they had the option to leave. They could leave the plantation, but a lot of people didn't leave the plantation because they didn't have anywhere to go. So when they didn't have anywhere to go, they just worked the plantations, right? But what happened was the former masters would let them work a plot of land. He would sell them the seed. They would grow the product. He would take the product and sell, and then he would give them what they wanted out of it. But along the way, as the product was going, whether it be corn, tobacco, whatever the case may be, he would be giving them food, stuff to take care of their houses. But he would charge them for it. And when the time comes to go sell whatever it was that they had for sale, whether it be tobacco, corn, soybean, whatever, all of this and that, he would take that out of it. And because most slaves, former slaves, didn't know how to count or anything like that, he cheated them out of their money. And he kept them in debt. So they were never able to get out of financial bondage. They were never able to get out of financial bondage. And that's how the cartels work. That's how the cartels work. And here's the thing about that for me. We always talk about how white people treat us, right? We always talk about that. But we never talk about, in a constructive way, how we treat each other. How we treat each other. And I don't understand how we can continue to treat each other the way we treat each other, but in the same breath demand that we be treated as human beings by the people that we say are oppressing us, right? Don't get me wrong, I agree with you. But we have to do better by each other. And using a way, another form of oppression to pull ourselves up out of bondage, so to speak, by oppressing anybody, it won't work. Yeah, you may get successful. You may sell all your stuff. You may have a lot of money. But what you're doing to your people should matter. But when you're a part of a cartel, it'll have you so far down in the hole that you won't even have the courage to do anything about your wife being murdered. And that's what Hector was facing. That's what he was facing. Even though he had made it to America, he still wasn't free. Now he sits in prison with a boatload of time, not with his son Miguel, but he gets visits. He sees him. But he has to explain to him why all of the choices that he made were the wrong ones. Because right now, his son, Miguel, is being tempted, encouraged, recruited, so to speak, to join the cartels. And when I mean join the cartels, it's not some ceremony. They just want to put him to work. They want him to start moving their product, managing one of their houses, just so they can get their hooks into him. Yeah. And that's why, and I'm going to tell you something before I end this episode. I wanted you to know about cartel business because I wanted you to understand that even if you're in this country and you're free, so to speak, you're not free if you're using your own people to come up. And that could be a drug dealer in the streets, in the neighborhood, somebody you grew up with. That can be somebody that's working a nice job, but you're treating your own people like they don't matter. It doesn't matter about the job. If you're using your own people to get ahead, if you're oppressing your own people to get ahead, then you're doing wrong. And I'm going to go even a step further. If you're oppressing anybody, that's not success. We have patterned what success looks like. And listen to what I'm finna say, y'all. We have patterned what success looks like after the very people that we say oppress us. So that tells me it's not about the people, it's about the techniques that they use. We have adopted the same techniques. And we tell ourselves that this is what it takes to be successful. I just don't believe in that. I don't believe that. I don't think you have to use and manipulate and lie and deceive and oppress people to be successful, hurt people to be successful. I don't buy into that. Not anymore. Not anymore. But if you participate, let me tell you something. If somebody approaches you and they want you to participate in any activities like what the cartel is talking about, you need to go the other way. Because even though it might be presented to you where it's going to help you, it's going to end up hurting you because it's going to put you in bondage. And I'm going to leave you with that. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. And I said peace, y'all.
I've been trying to breathe underwater.